Hey everybody, thank you so much for having me here today. I've noticed like a lot of these talks, like we've got like Reason and Elm and Swift. It's like the recipe for like a perfect like passive-aggressive tweet storm, you know? Anyway, I'm here to talk about Reason. The way you pronounce my last name is pies, cars, and chicks, right? So every time, I just like to add something to give you that visual feedback, right? Pies, cars, and chicks. So now you'll always know. Anyway, a little bit about me. I'm a Y Combinator alum. I went through it with what ended up becoming Draftbit. I'm a huge fan of Expo and React Native. If you haven't heard of Expo before, it's like Rails for React Native. It simplifies that whole process for you. And I used Expo from like the very beginning. And turns out, I found this out like 2 months ago, that I was their first user, which was pretty cool. So their like retention's pretty high, right? Like 4 years, you know? Like I dream of that for Draftbit. I love plants. I've got my own like Instagram like filled with plant photos. Whenever I like travel or whatever, like I like find a botanic garden or whatever, or even just like plants that I see on the side of somebody's house, you know, just to like kind of like catalog that moment. I love cycling. I love ReasonML, obviously, and I'm the co-founder of Draftbit. I'm going to start with a little bit about Draftbit. I want to show you why I like Reason and like how that whole process began, right? So when Draftbit originally started, there were 2 engineers. And for those of you that don't know what Draftbit is, it's a tool to help you build mobile apps visually, right? So you go to this website, you scan a QR code, you drag a bunch of components on your screen, and you can export that code. You can export the screen, the whole project, bits and pieces, whatever you'd like. And this is what it looks like. So what you see on the left-hand side is the browser. And then this is like a phone simulator running. And you could scan that QR code, you can use simulator, you can do whatever you want, but for the sake of this demo, right? And so instead of having to do all the setup of getting Android Studio or Xcode or all these tools installed locally, we do all that for you in the browser, right? You just go to draftbit.com. I just wanted to give you a quick demo of like how that all works, right? Like we're building like an onboarding push notification screen, or I think a geolocation screen, right? So give us permission to access your background location, right? And essentially you've got a skip thing, no, I don't want to do this, or enable, right? So we drag a bunch of components onto the screen, mess with a bunch of the settings, and ultimately build the screen out pretty quickly. One thing that we do have too, we've got a lot of these like tightly integrated components, and what that allows us to do is like theme everything on the fly really, really quickly and easily, right? So it just makes the process a lot easier, especially if you're like considering getting into mobile app development. It's a really great place to start. And the cool part about Draftbit is that people build really cool things, right? These aren't simple apps. There's a lot of complex logic behind the scenes, right? These are all like real-world apps that people have put together. So it's cool and exciting to see me build those things. But what does that mean in terms of like the engineering stack, right? So, like I mentioned, we do use Reason, but we still use a little bit of JavaScript. And it's like sprinkled all over our code base, right? And now think about all the different things that go into this, all the different states, the transitions, the animations, the code generator, the compiler. This was all built in just a few months with 2 folks, right? And so
do you generate code in the browser, or is it
we generate the code in the browser. Yeah. And so anyway, like if you've ever worked at a startup, the startups are really hard, right? Silicon Valley, the show, make them seem really fun and exciting. They can be, right? But most of the time, you're just like putting out fires, right? Like there's high turnover. Like you don't get paid as much as working at like a nice corporate thing. Like you work long hours, right? Like the people that you do work have a lot of opinions because there's only a couple of you, so you get to know each other, and then you argue about dumb crap, right? Like that's just the life of a startup, right? And it happens to the best of us. And we needed to move quickly to survive, right? And now what happens when you start building in feature after feature after feature, right? You can say that you're TDD, but then you kind of forget to write the test because like this needs to go live, or we won't have the money to like, continue, right? So it's like one thing for like everybody that I work with, but as a founder, like I basically work when I'm awake, right? Like, like you can go home whenever you want, but then somebody's got to fix that because someone else is like, yo, this shit is broken. Can you help me? It's like really hard for me, like, yeah, no worries, man. When I get to the office by like 10:30 tomorrow and have my CBD latte, we can totally fix this, right? Anyway, once we gave Reason a shot, we never looked back. And it's really hard for a startup to choose a technology, right? Why not just stick to something that you're familiar with, right? So you can be effective and move quickly, right? And you all know what happens when you try to introduce something new. It's like great for like the demo use case, and then like you rely on it, and then 90% of the way you're like, we gotta rewrite this because it's actually not doing what we originally wanted it to do, right? But we decided to give it a shot. Like we all drank the Facebook Kool-Aid. We all love React at the office, and React Native, and Flux, and Redux, and Immutable, right? All Facebook technologies. So we're like, let's just give it a go. And what our stack looks like now is React and Reason, WebAssembly, Expo, GraphQL and Apollo, and Postgres. And the interesting part is we used to start with JavaScript, right? We all know JavaScript is tried and true when it comes to banging features out, right? Like, I just need to make sure that this works. I just want to make sure that I can come up with this and I can go tell the product manager, like, yes, we're capable of building this, right? Or, like a proof of concept. And that was great, but then those proof of concepts started getting shipped to production, and then it's like, well, we already wrote it, so let's just like see how long it lasts, right? And then, stuff like this started happening, right? Just like, yeah, like it broke again. It worked fine on my machine, but it broke in production, and I've got no idea why. Can you help me, right? Or even just like other projects. Hey, Peter. Like, yeah, what's going on? It's like, I think I broke something. Oh, yeah? Let's take a look. So you take the normal process of console.log this, console.log that, right? Like, oh, what happened? Turns out that we spelled URL, or just the case was different, right? And like, this wasn't made by a junior developer. This was made by a senior developer. This just happens, right? Like, these are like common JavaScript issues, right? Anyway. Let's go back to what life was like before 2015. I feel like that's when we sort of like entered this like shitstorm of chaos, right? Life before 2015 was great. We had Bower and jQuery, and you just had script tags, right? And like that was it. And then like Bower like injected them, and then like did all the updating. It would just like change the version number for you. Those were fun days, right? It kind of like reminds me of like the 90s, like back before we had cell phones. Like before we all got like super depressed because we're just like clicking things on our phone, right? Just like posting stuff for the gram, right? And then like life after 2015, right? So we got React in 2013. Jordan Walk introduced React to the world at JSConf in 2013. And we fucking hated it for like a year and a half. Remember that? Like, why would you put your HTML in JavaScript, you fucking idiot, And now it's like the most popular framework in the world, right? And that probably all happened around like 2015. And then we got FlowType, and Babel, and Prettier, and TypeScript, and Immutable, and Yarn, and Redux, and ESLint, right? And then like 15 other technologies that's not even listed, right? You've got Preact and Vue, and so many different ways of doing the same thing. Like, how can you not have analysis paralysis, right? Like, compared to what the 90s were like, like this is like this dystopian future that we live in. And sometimes we just rewrite things because it's like, oh, well, now we have to, right? Like, hooks are a thing, Like, we got to take 2 weeks off of work and rewrite everything to hooks, right? Anyway, so what do you get when you take all of that shit and then make it easy? You get Reason, right? You get one path of success, and everything just like seems to work. Anyway, just like some like high-level points. It was created by the same person that created React. So if you like React and use React, maybe you don't like React, right? Because no one ever likes the framework they actually use, right? Especially when you get into it, It's like I talk to a lot of founders, some who have been like successful, like the dude that sold OkCupid is like, don't ever get into dating apps, right? You know, it's like, the dude that sold Twitch is like, never build a video streaming company, right? You're worth $1 billion, but you know, never do it. Anyway, in that same vein, if you use React, right, then you'll probably like Reason, because Jordan launched React in 2013 and started working on Reason, you know, like shortly after that. So it's been all these things that we've hated or had trouble with, and now like encompassed in like a language. So the syntax is very similar to JavaScript, and they've done a lot to improve and do the best they can to make it similar to JavaScript so it's easy. The language under the hood, which I'll get into in a second here, is battle tested. It's been around for years. The compiler is very friendly. Yes, you have a compiler now. It's not Babel. And it does a very good job of like warning you or giving you hints. And there's multiple compile targets too, which is exciting. The same way that we have React and we have React Native, it's not write once, use everywhere, but learn this one domain-specific language and apply it to web and mobile, right? It allows folks at Facebook to move very quickly, and now like the rest of the world to move very, very quickly. Does anybody know what React was originally written in 2010 when Jordan first came up with the thing? Anybody? It wasn't written in JavaScript. It was written in standard ML. 2010, I had an index.php file trying to get this PHP include to work because I had a header and footer. And Facebook is writing declarative UI languages in standard ML, right? But then they quickly realized that, like, hey, the world's not going to use this if it's in this like super complex language. So they wrote it in JavaScript and then released it to everybody in 2013. So what is Reason? It's JavaScript as a statically typed functional language with a friendly compiler and amazing developer productivity. And one of my favorite things is if it compiles, it works, right? Things don't get stuck in promises, right? Things just like work, which is nice. And Reason is based on OCaml, right? So if you haven't heard of OCaml, it's a functional programming language. It's had 20 years of type theory. It's got a bunch of pattern matching features that I'll go over, amazing functions, and this ecosystem called OPAM, right? And that's like their version of NPM. Now, you might be wondering why OCaml, right? Like, OCaml is like a semester in college that you have to write a compiler in that you want to forget about like a day after you take the class, right? We're all used to it being like a complete disaster, right? But there's different ways of writing OCaml, and it's actually quite a friendly language. And the nice part is, with all of the things that OCaml offers, it makes it a great sort of pair with writing front ends. So it compiles like at least 10 times faster than Babel. At least. I think it's like 100, but I didn't want to put that on the slide because then you'd be like, oh, Peter said 100 times, right? But so anyway, at least 10 times faster. It eliminates typical JavaScript errors. There is no such thing as null or undefined. That's a whole class of errors, right? Like how many times have you gotten the dreaded cannot find null of null or whatever? I just get goosebumps thinking about it. It's easy to use within your existing apps. The interop is amazing, right? Nobody's expecting you to start a app in Reason and like have to rewrite your stuff. You can write with as many components as you want in JavaScript or Reason and use them hand in hand and get the type safety and get all the benefits on both ends, right? So in terms of like compile times, check this out. You've got Scala, Kotlin, TypeScript, OCaml. Somebody wrote an app, or a bunch of people wrote the same app in a bunch of different languages and just compared. And OCaml's compiler crushed everything, right? And in a real-world setting, this is what we start off with. You've got Create React App 3.0 on that side, right? Like optimized for the last Chrome browser, because that's all we develop in. And you've got Reason on the right-hand side, right? So this just crushes. It just goes. Tick, 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 done, right? And Create React App is like, like I'll get there. Like, don't worry about it. Go get some coffee, Anyway, it's just like fun to look at. So in terms of like compiler messages, we get that nice red screen that pops up in JavaScript, right? Like you save the code, then you wait, and then you get the white screen because like your app's loading, and then boom, something breaks. But Reason warns you ahead of time. It warns you immediately. And it doesn't just warn you if something is missing, right? It has nice like logic-specific errors, right? if you've got a pattern that you need to match against, and then you forget to match against a certain case, it warns you about that and suggests that you like do something about it, right? It just like prevents like the leaky holes that make your app a little, brittle. Okay, so we'll go over some React stuff. Have folks used React here before? Yeah? Okay, cool. So you've seen what ReactJS looks like, right? This is what React looks like on the reason end, right? So as you can see here, a lot of it is similar, but a little different, right? You probably noticed this thing, right? So you can consider that somewhat of like a decorator, right? And it does something special behind the hood that converts it to JSX, right? Or the JSX function calls that would end up ultimately being executed in the browser. Anyway, one thing you'll notice is, unlike strings in JavaScript that you just write, we have to wrap ours in React.strings, right? Because even your JSX is typed. And you might wonder, like, why is this valuable? Well, because you may know that it's a string, but the computer doesn't, right? The computer does not know that it's a string, and uncertainty like fucks up our worlds a lot of times, right? Like I like this give. I actually wish I could make this like a shirt because this is like my life, Anyway, so there's also another way you can do that. You can write that same function with this like pipe operator here, right? And this is called pipe first. And pipe first is like one of the best readability features of Reason that I personally like, right? It makes it super easy to write composable functions. So have you ever done this, right? Like in JavaScript, maybe it'll be like export default, like with Apollo, like with Redux or whatever, or map state to props, I forget what it is, right? But you do these things, and you can use the compose function, right? And that just like makes you write it top to bottom, right? But then you're never sure, like, oh, wait, is like the top one the one that goes first, or is it the bottom one that goes first, right? And it's always like all right, let me go open up the documentation and read about this. Pipe first just does it in a way that makes sense, right? So it's always top down, right? And it reads really, really, really nicely. And now, what do you do about that in like a real world setting? So imagine just having like a list or an array of data that you want to map over as a component, right? It just makes it very, very readable. And let me explain what's going on here. So moving on to the next like cool Reason feature, we have what's called a list, right? So it looks like an array, but it's a list. And what's the difference? They are super fast, and they're immutable. So you can make changes with them. They're always going to be ordered, right? It works similarly to an array, but behind the scenes, it's a lot different. And to be honest, I don't really know what they do behind the scenes, so I just trust them. You'll also notice this, right? This like belt thing, right? And like I'm doing a series of commands. We have Lodash in JavaScript that you have to install and then you can like use. But Reason has something called a standard library, right? And it's like built in, so you can start using it whenever you want, and it's fine. And it knows when you're using it, and it knows when you're not using it. So it knows how to pull the things out and knows how to pull the things in. So you're not like bundling all of Lodash into it.
The arrows here, are they minus greater than, or is it actually equal arrow?
Oh, it's
Special character.
yeah.
So it is the 2 characters.
It's 2 characters, yeah. Anyway, okay, cool. So let's go over like what is going on next here, right? So we map the things that we usually do, right? And then we do this like 2 array thing, right? Because React supports arrays but doesn't support lists, we convert that list to an array, right? And then lastly, we render, this is like the typing part, the React.string thing, we turn it into a React array element that then React on the JavaScript side can read and know this is going to be exactly what you're telling it is. Anyway, both lists and arrays are supported. So in that example, I just wanted to showcase this like new data structure. But you can still use normal JavaScript arrays, right? And a great example of that is when you pull something out from like a database, right? And you got the request, and it always comes back in an array. Anyway, hooks are the future, right? I hope you've used hooks. I particularly love this one, right? This happens all the time in San Francisco. Anyway, So if you haven't used hooks yet, I strongly recommend it. I like held out for the longest time, but now I'm like fucking obsessed, right? Anyway, React supports or Reason supports like a very type-safe version of them, right? So in JavaScript, this is an array, but in Reason, it's called a tuple. Like that's a specific data structure, right? And they're immutable, ordered, and heterogeneous. And what that means is you can do stuff like this. You've got type coordinates, right? You can say like Chicago's coordinates are whatever these numbers are, arbitrary numbers, right? And then you can destructure those values too. So you can pull out the latitude and longitude from Chicago really, really nicely, right? And that's like optimized a certain way, and the compiler understands how those things work. So it just makes life a little more friendly. Anyway, here's like using like the React use reducer hook, right? So you've got some sort of state action, right? And for every tick, right, increase the count by 1. And you probably notice, like, why is this uppercase? What's going on here, right? So this is what's called pattern matching in Reason, right? And it's an amazing feature, right? If we were to use just strings, right, this is what that looks like. This is as close as it gets in the JavaScript, or in the Reason world, to JavaScript, right? And then the last one is, that's sort of like your default case, right? If none of these match, it'll always use a default case. And the compiler will warn you if you don't include it. Anyway, let's see. So tick, why is that capitalized? It's called a constructor, right? And it's not a string. And it works similar to the constructors that we know, but they are a little different. And the fun thing to do with Reason is pair those constructors up together into what's called a variant, right? And what variants are is a way to like show off complex data, right? And it's always this or this or this, right? In this like simple case, it's either yes, no, or pretty much, right? And depending on the case that you match, you'll get that result, right? And constructors take arguments too, which is what you usually do, right? And this is like a more realistic version of that, right? A little less silly and a little more real. You got an error, right? So your server responds with some response, and that response happens to match this error constructor, right? You get some error message, and you can just like load that up, right? Loading doesn't need one, because it's just loading, right? And then lastly, the success. You get some data back from your server, in this case a name, and you just render that name out, right? And it's very specific, and it's very exact. The response can either be this or that, right? Very clean and consistent. Anyway, another amazing feature is gentype, right? So gentype allows you to generate bindings between Reason and JavaScript. So let's say you're super into Reason, but your coworkers aren't. Fuck them. You know, you do your thing, give them the TypeScript types that they like, and they just import the file this way, right? So it looks exactly the same, except it's got this .gen thing. Anyway, it supports both flow type and TypeScript, and it generates like perfect bindings. Features that like you never even knew about in Flow or in TypeScript, it just does that automatically. The core team is like very specific about this. They want these things to work, right? They want the interop, so they make it as easy as possible. And so you can use your existing components in Reason too, right? And you just import them like this, right? There's a lot of crap that happens here, right? A lot of boilerplate, but the only thing that you have to worry about is this line, right? And the fun part is this will all be automated soon anyway, so it's a thing that you have to do now, but you won't have to worry about later, right? And then it'll just like consume your file, it'll consume the types, and you're good, right? Now you can use a JavaScript component in Reason without having to do much work, the same way that gentype goes from Reason to JavaScript. Now, how do you add Reason to a JavaScript project? It's pretty straightforward. Just 3 things. Add the BS platform, add the config file, and the script tags, right? And this is like a super boilerplate file. It's like sort of like your package.json, right? There's a few extra things that you end up adding here, but these are the things that are like more or less the same, right? It's the same every time. All right. So now let's go over all like the fun stuff. Like where is this all going, right? Like why do we need another language? Well, the fun part about Reason is that there's many compile targets, right? Bytecode, native code, and JavaScript. And we're going to talk about the JavaScript part first, right? But now imagine writing your Reason app and compiling it and getting an IPA or APK for your mobile app, right? Or compiling it to bare metal on a server, right? So in traditional environments, you needed a Linux host, right? And like a firewall and all these things that you had to do, right? Well, with Reason, you can just compile it down to bare metal and run your application, right? Anyway, we're going to talk about BuckleScript, which is like the JavaScript path. BuckleScript was made by the folks at Bloomberg. And what they wanted to do is build something that was very readable and very, very fast, right? The stuff that it's compiled is pretty readable too, more than I would expect from something, right? Like you look at Babel and it's like all mangled up and you don't really want to go into it, right? But this is some sort of, fizz-buzz implementation. We don't have to focus too much about, what's going on here. But if you break down the compiled code, right, it's like readable, right? It makes choices for you that you may not, but it's like, okay, like I know what's going on, right? I know what's going on here, right? And in terms of a factorial, right, which is, Reason is actually a lot easier to write factorials. There's the same thing on the JavaScript side. It imports this library at the top, and you're like, oh, okay, it's like importing a library. But the rest just sort of makes sense, And the compiled code is a lot faster, too. Look at an immutable JS map, which is already really, really fast. Immutable data structures are super fast. A Reason immutable app is 3 times as fast, right? And tree shaking is perfect, right? It actually exists. There was a tweet the other day, like, let's not joke about, like the Webpack tree shaking that takes place, because it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't work the way it's supposed to work, right? But we all say it does. But in reality, bundles are a lot higher, right? So, 55 KBs in Webpack is like 900 actual bytes in Reason, right? So you're like, what? How does that work? But it is sick, right? It's because of how the Reason compiler knows everything ahead of time and can figure out what things that you're using and what things it can discard, right? And that's because BuckleScript has a very deep integration with all the JavaScript libraries, right? Everything that you see in the browser. Okay, now there's one thing that you have to do that gets a little tricky, and that's when you bind JavaScript to Reason, right? Like you want to access the window. You want to access like document.event listener. So you do these things, right? And honestly, these are the hardest parts of Reason. I'm selling it a lot, but I also have to like warn you, like the things that like get really hard is like when you have to type things, right? And the types have to be perfect. Anyway, the nice part is there's bindings for every library at this point. So no matter what you search, whether it's like BS Node or like BS Emotion, BS Styled Components, whatever that you use in the React world exists on the Reason side, right? Which makes my life a lot easier because the last thing I want to do is spend all day writing a binding when I should be writing features, right? All right, now, is Reason production ready? The answer is yes, and a lot of people do it or use it, and you'd be surprised who were the early adopters of Reason, right? Bloomberg, Messenger.com, Accenture, Jane Street, McKinsey and Company, right? Draftbit, and many, many more. And guess what? Those aren't startups, right? Startups are usually the ones that go after like the shiny things, right? But those are big corporations, right, that use this in production. You've never really seen that before. Can anybody guess why Jane Street has been using Reason? They use OCaml, yeah. And the reason they use OCaml is because when reviewing pull requests, the traders themselves review the logic of that pull request, right? It's not just a developer to a developer. So traders come over and review it because they're able to write it in such a way that makes sense for somebody that's not a developer, right? So just fun fact. And Messenger.com is completely written in Reason, right? Like this like thing that's like powers like 1 billion users at least is all Reason right now. And Facebook has done some amazing case studies for why it's been effective, why they can move faster, and why like they keep committing to it, right? I don't even know why I put this one in. I just kind of wanted to. Okay, so wrapping up, where can you learn more? Your local Reason meetup. I don't know if there's one in Detroit, but if you're from a different town, like there's a good chance. Like Chicago has one. The ReasonML Discord is super, super friendly. Everybody on that Discord, no matter what time you ask a question, it could be 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody will answer, right? For whatever reason, Reason developers are vampires and just like don't sleep. So you can always get help. And the ReasonConf is coming to Chicago on October 8th. The keynote is by Jordan Walk, the creator of React himself. Fun fact, Jordan has not given a talk since releasing React in 2013 at JSConf. This will be his first talk since. He's going to be releasing something new and very, very exciting. And he won't tell me what it is yet, but I'm very, very excited. You can learn more at ReasonConf US. And lastly, if you're like, thinking about these things, like, I don't know if I'll give Reason a shot. This is what people used to say about React, right? Like, it was like a joke for the longest time, and then it blew up, right? So in that same way, give Reason a shot, and it could pay itself in dividends. Anyway, lastly, Reason native. So I've talked all about the JavaScript side of things, but there's this whole community and infrastructure of native development tools, right? If you wrote your entire Reason app using Belt, which is that library, you could run your tests, your Jest tests natively using a Reason framework that run, much, much faster than what your JavaScript test would run with a lot less memory. So you don't run into the same Circle CI issues when you've got a big test suite running. Anyway, thank you so much for having me. I hope you enjoyed this. I know this was a ton of information for 30 minutes. And if you have any questions, please ask. You've been the best audience ever. Thank you.